So at this point I've gotten my AC stick welder in there just to see how things are going to fit. And I can see that the edges here with the screw holes fit perfectly. So that's great. And the MIG welder will go here on top. Now what I've done is cut two small pieces like this. They're approximately 6 inches. It's just some metal I had laying around the shop. And I'm going to put a piece on each side, just like this, to add extra support to the top square tubing, which will be holding the MIG welder. So all I'm going to do is hold it with my hand and then reach down and tack it on. And now I'll repeat the process on this side. And now that the pieces are tacked on, I'm going to go in and put full beads. Now I'm all done welding the small supports, and at this point I got to weld some bars on to support the gas cylinder over there. So what I'm going to do is cut some 1x1 square tubing and weld a piece inside over here. I'm just going to leave it here for now just to show you how the cylinder is going to go over top that. So basically the tank's going to go over here. It's going to be supported by the 2x2 square tubing over here, and then the 1x1 will support the back end, and then I'll put a small brace behind here between the two square tubings over here. So I'll measure between the two square tubings, and I've got 13 inches. So I've got a piece here I'm going to cut at 13 inches and weld it on there. And I've got the piece welded on, and later on I'm just going to grind down the welds a bit to make them flush. And as you can see, it's going to support the cylinder pretty good. So I've got the cylinder on here, and I put a small piece of metal right behind it over here. As you can see, it goes from side to side. Now I'm going to weld that on there so that the strap holding my fuel tank can be connected to it. And at the same time, it's kind of like a support for the tank not to go back. So you don't have to use the exact same piece of metal I used. Anything that's in your shop, you could weld right across. Even if it's a piece of angle iron, that will do as well. It just happened that this is what I had laying around. And it's approximately 9.5 inches down from the top. And make sure it's even on both sides. I've got it back on my table, and I grinded down the welds here. So it's nice and flush like that. And also up here, just on this side. And by the way, eventually this is all going to be painted black. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is add little pieces of metal right between here, just to give this 2x2 here some extra support. So all I'm going to use is a small piece of flat metal. I grinded one corner so that the weld here won't be in the way, and I'm just going to insert it in like this, just like that, and then weld it on. Good way to hold that little piece up is with a magnet. Hold it up and then weld your piece on. So I've got the pieces welded. I also welded underneath them, and now I'm going to run my angle grinder with the flap disc just to make it nice and smooth. But the welds underneath I'm not going to grind down. I'm just grinding down the top part just for cosmetic purposes, and whatever I don't have to grind, I don't, just to keep the welds there so that they're stronger. Okay, now I just ran my flap disc over and I got it nice and smooth. And now on to the next step. So the next step I'm at in the project is figuring out the wheels I'm going to install and then welding them on. Now these are the wheels I'm looking at using, 2 for the back like this, and for the front I'm going to use 2 small casters like this, and they've got bearings in them. Not bearings over here, but up here. So to get the front casters on, I clipped them on with a C-clamp. I'm going to tack it, then weld it around. And I did leave a space here between the edge of the caster plate and the metal. That's just so that I can run my bead here without it sticking out. Now I've tacked on both casters. At this point I decided not to fully weld them on, just in case that during the project I decide that these aren't right for me. At least if I change my mind and wanted them off, all I have to do is grind off 3 tack welds on each caster. It's much harder getting them off once they're fully welded. Now I've got it up. That's the front, and in the back it's going to be the bigger wheels like this. And I'm going to use these bolts with a 1/2 inch diameter. They're going to go right through. And as you can see, I've held on a piece of metal here with a clamp. This will be welded onto the clamp. The bolt actually will be welded on like that. And I've measured everything, and I realized that my cart will be level when the head of the bolt here is flush with the square tubing. So I'm just going to make a quick mark. And I've also grinded the back of the bolt here so it's nice and flat. And this is how it's going to go. And here's for the other side. I've already welded this one and it's still hot. So when I go to weld it on the frame, I can move it up and down until the cart's level. And then once it's level, with the wheels on the floor, that's where she's going to stay. So this is to give you an idea here. Then I'm going to chop the bolt off, drill a hole, and put a cotter pin and a washer to stop the wheel from coming off. And here it is. Also, you got to use your level again to make sure everything's level this way and that way and so forth before you make any final welds on your stuff. By the way, I bought these wheels at Princess Auto for around $7.95 each. If you live in the US, probably at Harbor Freight you can buy them. I was going to use these lawnmower wheels that I have under here, but they're made of plastic and I thought, well, eventually it may damage the wheels or they might break. So I saw these and I thought, might as well buy these because they're metal on the inside and they're nice solid rubber. And these actually have bearings inside of them, so that's a bonus. Alright, at this point I've made sure that everything's level. At this point I've just got it supported with different things there. And I've got my wheel positioned exactly where I want it. So I'm just going to hold it there and then give it a little tack weld for now. I just wanted to do one tack weld in case I need to move it around a bit later on. So I'm going to leave it like this for now. And then I'm going to move on to the other side and do the same thing. And the distance between the metal plate and the end here is approximately 3 inches 5/8. You can put it further back if you want or closer in, just as long as your whole cart is well balanced. And I'll just measure 3 inches 5/8 over here and mark it. Now you can put it on the floor and try it out just to make sure that everything moves freely and that all 4 wheels are properly on the floor. So this looks pretty good to me. And at this point I'm going to continue filling in the welds for the metal plates holding the back wheels. And you want to make sure that everything is still level. Make sure that your floor is level though first before you check it. And then if you need to make adjustments to the metal plates at the back, then do it before you fully weld them on. And before I weld the metal plates on, I put a C-clamp because sometimes it may tend to separate from the square tubing over here. So this way here it's going to be right flush against it, and then when it's welded it's not going to move again. Okay, so I got this side done. Now I'm just going to repeat the process on the other side. Now that I'm happy with the wheels, I got them all welded. I'm going to finish off the casters over here. Previously I had just tacked them on. So all I'm going to do is put more welding beads all around here and that'll be good. So at this point in the project, I'm going to show you how I'm going to mount the wheels on this little shaft here securely. Now as you can see there's a washer here. I'm also going to put one over here. The washer in there is just to prevent the wheel from rubbing on the metal part inside. Now if you wanted to, you could put a lock nut over here and cut the end of the shaft. But what I prefer doing is just drilling a small hole here and putting in the cotter pin. The reason why I'm doing that is so that I don't have a shaft here protruding, because sometimes in the shop it can get caught on stuff. So all I'm going to do is mark where I'm going to drill a small hole right around here. And I'll just start it with a starter punch. This is the cotter pin I'll be using, and this is a 7/64 drill bit. And make sure you drill right in the center of that shaft. So now that the hole's drilled right through, I'm going to put the wheel back on. I'm going to put the washer, and I'll take a quick look as to see how that pin will fit. And that's perfect. Now I'm going to shorten the shaft here a bit. I'm going to mark it and cut it with my angle grinder. So at this point I would assume that cutting the shaft right here would be good. And before I do this, I'm going to remove the wheel. And remember, before using any power tool, make sure to have safety glasses on. Now when you're done cutting it, it may be sharp at the end, so you may want to use a grinding disc to make it nice and round. Okay, so I made it as round as I could, then no one's going to get cut on the end of the shaft. And now I can grease that up a little bit and put the wheel back on. Actually, I won't put the grease on until I've painted the whole cart. So for now, I'm just going to show you the order of things. The washer goes in, then the wheel, another washer, and then a cotter pin. And there you go. That's all done on this side. Now you have to go on the other side and just repeat the process. Okay, I've got both wheels installed, the front ones as well, and this is where I'm at in the project. It's starting to come together now. Won't be much work left to do now. So I got it up on the bench here just to give you a better view without anything in the back. What I have to do yet is put a handle at the front here, but first I want to see how the MIG fits on top there. Now I put everything on the cart just for now to see how things are going to fit, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. Nothing secured yet, it's just here to tell me exactly how things fit. So as you can see there, the welder down there is good, and this one's okay, but I need to put a platform over here. Now I'm either going to put metal plating on top or a piece of plywood like this and just paint it black when I'm done. Some people thought it might have been overkill to go with the 2x2 square tubing, but I'm glad I did now because it's pretty heavy. Both welders have a lot of weight, plus you've got the cylinder on the back. And make sure you've got good casters and good wheels in the back. The reason why I put casters in the front and wheels at the back was to give it more stability with the back wheels. The casters are okay, but I find they're not as stable as having back wheels like that sticking out. And it will also be easier to move around with a bigger wheel at the back. And for a pulling handle, I may just weld a piece of metal like this at the front of these two tubes and just use that as my handle. But I'm not quite sure yet. I just want to make sure there's enough room here when you have your gloves on if you need to pull the machine. So anyways, I may weld this on and then another handle over here. I'll decide that later on in the project.